Hello friends, the second lecture for this week is characters and characterization in Girish Karnad's Tughlaq. We have already seen the list of characters, so it is easy for us. We have some central characters in the main plot and we have some marginal characters in the subplot. Though Aziz and Azam, particularly Aziz, is not so marginal a character, he becomes a key character in the play. So under the category central characters, we have Tughlaq, stepmother, Bharani and Najib. These are very important characters. We also have some friends and foes. Remember, the king Tughlaq had some friends and foes. When these friends would become foes, God only knows. We have Einel Mulk, who was a very close friend of Tughlaq, started marching on Delhi. Then we have Sheikh Imam-ud-din, who is considered to be a saint, started speaking against Tughlaq. We have Shihabuddin, who is actually a friend, but then he is brainwashed by these amirs and sayyids to rise against, actually to kill Tughlaq. Then we have Sardar Ratan Singh, who is a soldier in the army of Tughlaq, but then he does something that is to persuade Shihabuddin to rise against Tughlaq. Again he betrays Tughlaq and escapes. We have marginal characters in the subplot. Two primary characters we have in Aziz and Azam. Of the two, Aziz is more important. We have a character called Ghiyasuddin Abbasid, who is supposed to come from Arabia, but then Aziz kills that person and takes the role of Ghiyas-ud-din and meets the king at the end of the play. So what happens is, certain so called insignificant characters become significant by certain actions, by certain words that they utter in the play. For example, Hindu woman, she always identifies Aziz. He is considered to be a corrupt officer. Aziz, as a corrupt officer, allowed the Hindu woman's child to die. So she remembers him, but then she can't do anything, because at the time when the king kneels in front of Aziz, who is in the guise of Ghiyas-ud-din, she feels for it. Oh, that thief, that murderer of my child, how can the king kneel in front of him? And then we have the muezzin, who calls out the prayer, who sings the prayer, who invites the devotees to join the prayer. Throughout the play, prayer is a motive, a key motive that occurs again and again. What are the objectives that we have for this presentation? To classify and describe the characters in Girish Karnad's play Tughlaq, like central and marginal characters, or characters in the main plot and characters in the subplot. To delineate the character of Tughlaq in detail, because he is the protagonist of the play, all actions center on him. So we will have a lot to learn from Tughlaq's own words and the words of others. To portray the characters of the stepmother, Najib and Bharani. The stepmother is always with Tughlaq. Similarly, Najib and Bharani, they always come along with Tughlaq. To picturize the friends and foes of Tughlaq, like Ain-ul-Mulk and Bharani. To contrast them with Aziz, Azam and Ghiyasuddin. Remember, Bharani and Najib, they contrast with Azam and Aziz. Next, to discuss the significance of minor and supporting characters in the play that we have. Here is the classification of characters. In the main plot, we have Tughlaq, stepmother, Najib, Bharani, Sheikh Imam-ud-din, Shihab-ud-din, Sardar, Ratan Singh and Einel Mulk. Einel Mulk never appears on the stage, that is why we have written off stage along with his name. Then we have Azam, Aziz, Karim, Ghiyas-ud-din, Hindu woman, refugee family. We have a whole lot of other minor characters and the crowd in the subplot. Now the major discussion centers around the character of Tughlaq, so we will learn about Tughlaq from his own eyes. After a reading of the play, I have identified all these features from Tughlaq's own point of view. Then we will have some observations on Tughlaq from other characters. Tughlaq is considered to be a lover of justice, equality, progress and peace, or he presents himself as a lover of justice, equality, progress and peace. He says in one context, he is no mad whim of a tyrant, when amirs and sayyids are bewildered, confused about the announcements that Tughlaq makes with reference to shifting the capital. Actually, Tughlaq is a believer in Hindu-Muslim unity. That is one of the major reasons for Tughlaq to shift the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. Delhi is a predominantly Muslim based city, whereas Daulatabad is a Hindu city. So he wanted to unite these two religions, these two people in one place. Tughlaq is a great chess player. We are shown that he is playing a chess and he has a problem, and he respects Ain-ul-Mulk for his ability to play the game well. He is not at all worried about different kinds of problems in his country, particularly the rebellion of Einel-Mulk. In many cases we see that he does not want to sleep because he wants to do certain things for the country before his death. He is presented as a poet, an idealist, a history maker. He is aware of certain ambitions, aspirations. He wants to do certain things for his country. He is not at all worried about his enemies. More often he is worried about his people. He wants them to go to a next stage in life. He is horrified by the crooked minds of people. Whatever good he does, people do not respond to him in the right way. That is where he thinks that people are crooked. He does not have time for misunderstandings. He wants things to be clearly stated and things to be done quickly. He plays games with saints and rebels alike. He plays the chess game and he uses people also like the pawns. So he plays games with saints like Sheikh Imam-ud-din and rebels like Einel-Mulk. He acts as if willing to learn from Sheikh Imam-ud-din, but he does not do it. That is where he pretends to listen to Sheikh Imam-ud-din, but he does not. He never consciously tried to go against the tenets of Islam. He is a Muslim king and he is supposed to follow Islam. The Islamic scholars like Sheikh Imam-ud-din say that the king is powerful, but he is not doing something for Islam. That is why they speak against him. We continue Tughlaq in his own eyes. We learn more about him now. He never denied the word of God, that is, he never denied religion. Most of the times he feels lonely, although he is considered to be one of the greatest kings in Indian history. He recognizes dirt and sickness in his kingdom. He is aware of the corruptions. He is aware of the problems in his society. He does not want to blame God for all these dirty things that are there in the society. So the dirt deposited by men should be cleared by men, not by God. That is how he has the dream. He wants to go a long way in his dream. So often he calls himself God's most humble slave. He also sometimes, ironically, he says, an incompetent fool in front of the public. He is influenced by Greek learning and he is inseparable from it. He is not only an Islamic scholar, he is also a Greek scholar. That means he has a wide scholarship. He considers people and wants to inspire and teach them. He wants to give something to the people. That is why he is an idealistic king. He wants to mend the people's minds before mending their souls. Soul is related to religion, mind is related to politics. So he wants to change the society before changing religion. He is willing to make peace with Einel-Mulk, his friend who turned out to be an enemy, for the sake of his people. He does not want Muslims to die by fellow Muslims. That is why he has a deal with Sheikh Imam-ud-din. He persuades Sheikh Imam-ud-din to accept his peace mission. He does not want to take a chance and so plans a trap for Einel-Mulk. He wants to do things in his own way. He never takes chances. He takes the help of Sheikh Imam-ud-din to control Ain-ul-Mulk. At the same time, he wants to protect himself and his soldiers. Further, we have more ideas from Tughlaq. Most of the times he is grateful to people, he acknowledges them. When he returns from that battle at Karnad, he says, I am grateful to you. He says this to Shihab-ud-din. At least he presents himself as a man who can forgive his enemy, that is Ain-ul-Mulk. Tughlaq manipulates many things in the play. We find that Tughlaq declares a state mourning for Sheikh Imam-ud-din, although the death was caused by Tughlaq's own plan. He shares plans off the hook. For example, the arrival of Ghiyasuddin Abbasid. Suddenly he will say something to the people. He bans prayers and then says, until the arrival of Ghiyasuddin Abbasid. He often thinks about his own kingship. Am I a king because I come from the royal family? Is it because of inheritance? Do I have the capacity to rule the country? Such questions he asks in front of people. He thinks about that very seriously. He remembers his schemes and talks about them often. His schemes, his plans for the welfare of the people. He announces a scheme of copper currency and feels that he has done something wrong at a later stage, but he doesn't want to accept it. He needs a confidence and trust of people, not distrust. People don't trust him because people call him a mad king. He is prepared to beg and kneel down in front of others. We see that on the stage actually. He mobilizes the support of Amirs and Saids theatrically. He plays a game. See, when he meets them in a court, he kneels in front of them and persuades them to go along with him. He tastes blood by killing Shihabuddin with his own hands. That's the first time we see that Tughlaq becomes really uncontrollable. He turns merciless, cruel and vengeful. He was an idealistic king, but then he became very vengeful and became murderous. He became more cruel because people attempted to kill him when he was praying. That's why he bans prayer until the arrival of Ghiyasuddin. This until the arrival of Ghiyasuddin is an idea suggested by Najib. We have more ideas about Tughlaq. Tughlaq is an idealist king, and that we learn about through a flashback. He had something like an epiphany in his life of building a great empire. In one of his conversations he says, I was the earth, was the grass, was the smoke, was the sky. He was more than a human being. He thought he was a man who was not understood by anyone very well. He always needed an audience. He wanted to share his ideas with the people, but people did not listen to him. But only one good listener we have in this play is Bharani. Even Bharani finally leaves him. He feels a loss of energy and meaningless words in him. That's why this play is considered to be an existentialist play. We refer to Albert Camus, that absurd play. We have some elements of absurdism in this play. Although he has such great aspiration, although he is a very powerful king, he is unable to do much for the country or the people. He is aware of the political and economic problems, but he cannot give up his dream, though people call him mad. He said in one of his conversations, I have something to give, something to teach, which may open the eyes of history, but I have to do it within this life. He can't live forever, so he wants to do things quickly, but people are not prepared to accept such changes. The problem with Tughlaq is he is unwilling to accept his wrongdoings. Many times he made mistakes, but he did not accept them. He recognizes the irony of the rose garden as a dump yard of exchanged copper coins. He built a rose garden with great idealism as a source of imagination, creativity, but then when the copper coins were withdrawn, they were all dumped in the rose garden and the roses were gone. Let's see something more about Tughlaq now. When Vizier Najib is dead, or rather poisoned by his own stepmother, he is visibly shaken. Until he had the support of Vizier Najib, he was very powerful because Najib is his alter ego. Tughlaq defends Najib as a man of loyalty to the throne. The stepmother said Najib was a bad influence on Tughlaq, whereas Tughlaq believed that Najib was a loyal man. He admits his killing of his father and brother for an ideal. Remember, this theme of prayer or the motive of prayer has its origin long before, not only in the play. Tughlaq came to power by killing his own brothers and father during a prayer time. When he came to know about the death of Najib by the stepmother, he immediately sentenced his stepmother to death by stoning. He gave a very strong punishment to her, which is normally given to an adulteress. Of his three friends, Tughlaq loses the stepmother and also Najib. That means he loses two of them, only one is left. he starts praying to God against his own orders. He banned prayers, but then he started praying to God. Why am I become a pig rolling in this gory mud? Raise me, cleanse me, cover me with your infinite mercy. I have no one but you now. At this time, Bharani comes and prevents him from continuing the prayer. So he is prevented from disobeying his own order against prayer. He admits to Bharani, saying, I am teetering on the brink of madness, Bharani, but the madness of God still eludes me. Often Tughlaq talks about this madness of himself and also of God. Finally, he receives Ghiyasuddin, that is Aziz actually, and kneels before him, and he understands the meaninglessness of his own actions. Let us see a few more details about Tughlaq. At last, when Bharani wants to leave Tughlaq, Tughlaq is unable to bid farewell to Bharani. He is aware of his role in the death of Bharani's mother. Actually, Bharani's mother died, and so Bharani wants to go to Doab to pay his tributes to his mother. Tughlaq handles the death news of Azam very carefully. In the palace, even Azam wants to leave the palace, and then at that time somebody kills him, and so he handles a message very carefully. He exposes the rogue Aziz, but rewards him with a position in the government. This is something strange. Who will reward a rogue, corrupt person? But Tughlaq does it. He finds Aziz as a man who understands him well. So ultimately we see that anyone who can understand Tughlaq very well can get into some government office like this. Tughlaq is impressed by the revelation of Aziz about human life. What is life? Why was Tughlaq pursuing so many things? He didn't understand much, but Aziz could understand it. So what is the understanding of Aziz about life? The worth of life is straw and skin. Ultimately we are all going to die. That's it. Tughlaq guffaws on hearing. He laughs. He laughs when Aziz says, what if I am a dhobi, your majesty? When it comes to washing away filth, no saint is a match for a dhobi. Saints cannot cleanse human beings. Dhobi can. So the game of chess, remember Tughlaq is a player of chess. There is a checkmate at the end for Tughlaq's game, and then Tughlaq is shown as tired and sleepy. He even doesn't pray when the muezzin calls the faithful for prayer at the end of the play. So the meaninglessness, the absurd life is represented through the character Tughlaq that Girish Karnad visualized in the early days of our independent period. People were confused what to do, they didn't have. What is the meaning of this freedom? What is the meaning of this political or economic freedom? And so all these social issues, political issues are brought to us through this historical character Tughlaq. Now there are many other characters who also have perceived Tughlaq as a person in different ways. So we have all put them together in one slide like this. A young man says Tughlaq is a man who is not afraid to be human. That's dangerous for other characters actually. And the young man also says the king never misses a prayer. He is a very devoted person actually. A third man says Tughlaq is lenient to the Hindus. He is a tyrant. He is guilty of patricide and also fratricide. That is, Tughlaq is a king, but he has committed several crimes. The stepmother observes that Tughlaq doesn't want to sleep. He spends sleepless nights thinking about his kingdom. And because Tughlaq has that ability to act in front of people, she calls him a royal performer. Sometimes she also calls him a pompous ass, a fool. Only the stepmother can have this permission or the privilege to call him like this, no one else. However, she also says Tughlaq is an intelligent boy, a very hard working person, but he is impulsive. He is a glorious, idealistic, hopeful man, but then he has gone to pieces at the end. Sheikh Imam-ud-din, the religious leader, also says something about Tughlaq. Tughlaq is a disgrace to Islam. Although he is an eminent scholar, one of the most powerful kings on earth at that time in the medieval period, he was trying to become another god, and that is a sin of Tughlaq. He was a learned man, but He was the cleverest man in the world, most powerful king on the earth, cleverest man in the world according to Sheikh Imam-ud-din. That is why no one would believe Tughlaq. But when it came to handling Einel Mulk, somehow we find that Tughlaq persuaded Sheikh Imam-ud-din to go as an emissary, that is a peace ambassador to Einel Mulk. In the process, Tughlaq got Sheikh Imam-ud-din killed. He dealt with two enemies at the same time in a single blow. Bharani called Tughlaq a great man, a learned man. However, he also finds something illogical in the activities or in thought process of Tughlaq. We have Ratan Singh, a soldier in the army of Tughlaq. He calls Tughlaq, look at this, an honest scoundrel. How can honesty and this scoundrel go together? That is exactly what we find in Tughlaq, a man of contradictions. He is impartial, particularly when it comes to dealing with death. He kills everybody. He is a tyrant, a fanatic about prayer. Look at that, a man who never missed a prayer from a positive point of view, and Ratan Singh saying a fanatic about prayer. And Amir calls him a mad fellow, and the crowd calls him a murderer. Aziz says Tughlaq is imaginative and a wise man. We have a young man in Dawladabad who is not able to understand Tughlaq, so he says Tughlaq is incomprehensible. We have an old man who has seen life in the reign of Tughlaq. The old man calls Tughlaq a cruel murderer. Many people died during the period of Tughlaq for no reason. That is why this absurdity is very strong in the play. We saw Tughlaq from two points of view, that is from his own point of view and from the points of view of other characters in the play. Here we have an actor, C.R. Simha, who played the role of Tughlaq for over 30 years. According to C.R. Simha, who is Tughlaq? Tughlaq is a dreamer, an intelligent, shrewd, exemplary scholar, a tyrant and a bloodthirsty sadist, a religious man and a fanatic of prayer, a lover and promoter of secularism, Hindu-Muslim unity, a political thinker and an idealist beyond his times, a messenger of God, a lover of poetry, an expert strategist. And C.R. Simha also says Tughlaq is a psychopath, a man with some psychological problems. And finally, we come to the point that everybody says about Tughlaq, that is Tughlaq is a cunning and insane man. It is amazing, a madman so cunning, so intelligent, to rule the country for 20 years in spite of all problems, political problems in the country at that time. The stepmother is the next most important character for us. She is very close to Tughlaq. She is actually an invented character, not factually correct according to history. She is more like a confidant, a friend for Tughlaq. She listens to him. Tughlaq confides many things to this lady. She is aware of Tughlaq's parricide, that is Tughlaq committed the crime of killing his own father and brother. She is aware of it. She is concerned about the welfare of her theatrical son. As a mother, she wants to think about her own son, not so much about the country or other things. She is intimate enough to call him pompous ass and fool. No one else can dare call Tughlaq a fool. She tries to reason with Tughlaq on many good things. She tries to put some reason into his head, but he doesn't listen. She is helpless due to Vizier Najib's evil influence on Tughlaq, the minister who poisons the mind of Tughlaq on various issues. She requests Bharani not to leave Tughlaq for any reason, but at the end of the play we find that even Bharani, who promised the stepmother not to leave Tughlaq, had to leave. That is so unfortunate. She tries to prevent Tughlaq from massacring the Amirs because she killed Najib. Tughlaq pursues all those people who were behind the killing of Najib, but she is unable to prevent. Finally, as a punishment, she is stoned to death, which is a punishment meant for an adulteress. Tughlaq is aware of it. He is doing wrong, but he doesn't want to accept it. He doesn't want to stop his actions. That's the whole problem. He is impulsive. He continues in the wrong direction, though he knows that it is wrong. Next is Najib. He is a very important character. He is a minister and a close aide of Tughlaq. Once he was a Hindu and he converted himself into a Muslim. The reason that he gives is he cares more for the salvation of the society rather than the individual. So, the individual salvation is not enough for Najib. He is always suspicious of everyone, he suspects everyone including the king. Actually, the stepmother traps him. Will you suspect the king also? He says in front of the king, yes, it is my duty, I have to suspect everybody. He is very clever and manipulative. Tughlaq also calls him a devil because of these cunning strategies used by Najib. It is Najib who actually points to the similarity between Sheikh Imam-ud-din and Tughlaq. This similarity between the religious leader and the king actually is in favor of Tughlaq. That is why he uses or rather misuses Sheikh Imam-ud-din and he gets him killed. Because of these evil activities of Najib on Tughlaq, we find that the stepmother, unable to bear her son going into the wrong direction, gets Najib poisoned. He is considered to be a negative double of Tughlaq and we have him as a foil for Bharani. So, a kind of contrast. Bharani has a good influence, Najib has a bad influence on Tughlaq. Although these two characters are something like a double of Tughlaq. Next comes Bharani, a good angel. If Najib is a bad angel, Bharani is a good angel. His job is a historian. In the court of Tughlaq, he lived there for 7 years. He is a positive double for Tughlaq. The stepmother calls him sober, level-headed and honest, in contrast to Najib who is calculative. Bharani is fair-minded. He tries to guide the king in the right path. Till the last minute he tries it, but he fails. Bharani promises stepmother not to leave the king for a long time, but it does not happen. He prevents the king from praying against his own ban on prayers. When Tughlaq rewards Aziz, he is enraged. So, he is unable to understand why Tughlaq is behaving like this. He loses his own mother due to the riots in Doab because of Tughlaq's policies. He loses his own mother. He witnesses a live making of history, that is the farce of life. Life is meaningless at the end. That is the whole idea of this absurdism and existential play. He is unable to tolerate the king's madness and so finally he leaves him. But it is a very difficult situation, delicate situation in the play. It is a poignant moment for both Tughlaq and Bharani and for the readers as well. We have another character called Sheikh Imam-ud-din who plays a very important role. He is an Islamic scholar and a saint. He speaks to the Kanpur people against the king's misrule in the country. He reaches Delhi and he wants to speak to the people about Tughlaq's atrocities, but then he is trapped by the king as a spy. Sheikh Imam-ud-din understands the king's scheme but believes in saving the lives of people for the sake of Islam. Sheikh Imam-ud-din is a serious Islamic scholar. He wants to help Islamic people. So, he agrees to reach out to the warring or rebelling Ain-ul-Mulk as an envoy to save the lives of Muslim soldiers on both sides. If these two friends, that is Ain-ul-Mulk and Tughlaq, fight with each other, only Muslim people will get killed. So, he wants to save Muslim people on both sides. However, Sheikh Imam-ud-din uses the royal paraphernalia, royal robe given by the king. So, what happens? He is killed by Ain-ul-Mulk's army provoked by the king's army. He is instrumental in saving the king from Ain-ul-Mulk. A political problem is solved, but then he loses his own life. At the end, you know what happens? He is glorified as a martyr by the king. So, Tughlaq uses this character also for his own advantage. Next comes Ain-ul-Mulk. Ain-ul-Mulk is actually a friend. However, he marches against Delhi to fight with Tughlaq. He is an offstage character because he does not appear on the stage. He is important for another reason also, that is the game of chess is important for the play. He is the governor of Awadh and an intimate friend of Tughlaq. He is a great chess player and so he is admired by Tughlaq. He marches on Delhi as he has been asked to move to Deccan. The reason is Tughlaq wanted Einel Mulk to go to Deccan, and so he marches against Tughlaq. He has an army of 30,000 soldiers against a king who has an army of 6,000 soldiers. Many soldiers are fighting with others in different locations. Ain-ul-Mulk attacks Sheikh Imam-ud-din, mistaking him for Tughlaq because of the similarity between Tughlaq and Sheikh Imam-ud-din, particularly when the robes were of a royal king. Sheikh Imam-ud-din was attacked immediately. Einel Mulk loses the battle due to Tughlaq's war strategy of meeting at Kannauj and using the Sheikh as an envoy in royal robes. This is a stratagem, military stratagem used by Tughlaq. Einel Mulk is forgiven by Tughlaq for his outstanding skill in chess, not for friendship, but Tughlaq appreciated the merit of people in his own days. At the end of the play, it is reported that Einel Mulk invites Tughlaq from the famine-stricken Daulatabad. He is a complex character, but he is away from the whole play. That is why we call him an off-stage character. Next comes Shihabuddin. He is again a very important character for changing the whole outlook of Tughlaq. He is actually a friend of Tughlaq from Sampanshar. He is an outsider in Delhi. Through this character, we come to know more about politics in Delhi. He considers Sardar Ratan Singh as his own adopted brother. He is drawn into Delhi politics by the rebels. He agrees to the king's assassination at the time of prayer, which he would not do normally. But then he is later betrayed by Ratan Singh, whose father was killed by Shihabuddin's father, and kingdom was appropriated by Shihabuddin's father. So Ratan Singh uses this occasion to take revenge on Shihab-ud-din. He is caught and killed by Tughlaq with his own hands. That is a major event in the play. It is shown on the stage. He is treated as a savior of the king's life. Now you can understand how such incidents are reported in newspapers or in TV in the world. So news making, how does it happen? A man who attempts to kill the king is killed by the king, and then the man is shown as a person who saves the king. So a state mourning is announced. So you can understand false news making in action, that is now called post-truth in our world today. Sardar Ratan Singh is again an important character. He has many interesting things to share about Tughlaq and the Delhi politics. He is a soldier in Tughlaq's army. He is sent to Kannauj battle in the front rank. That is again a very important news for us. The problem is anyone who is sent in the front rank would not return, but he survives and returns. He plots the killing of Shihab-ud-din by joining hands with the rebellious amirs and religious leaders. He does not have any problem in betraying Shihab-ud-din to settle his family score, that is taking revenge on the death of his father. He intercepts the letters meant for Shihab-ud-din's father and sends them to the king. So the king comes to know about the rebellious activity in the palace because of Ratan Singh. Ratan Singh sends a signed letter to the king about the bid to kill him at the time of prayer. Actually he saves the king, but then he does not appear in front of the king to ask for some reward. He disappears from the scene completely. We have some lords and nobles in the form of amirs and sayyids. They appear in scene 5 and 6. They are rebels against the king. They do not appreciate the sultan's reformist policies like shifting the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. They do not want to move out of Delhi because they fear that they will lose their power. They do not mind using prayer time for killing the king. They plan to murder the king during a prayer with the help of Shihab-ud-din and Sardar Ratan Singh. They fail miserably in their plan, and so they are all executed in the palace. We have Sheikh Shamsuddin, an old man. He speaks the voice of tradition. He implores, requests Shihab-ud-din to save Islam and the people by assassinating the king. He rises against the tyrannical rule of the sultan. Actually, he is enraged by the arrests of religious leaders like Sheikh Haldari and exiles of Sheikh Hud. That means Tughlaq has taken some action against religious leaders, thus instigating other people to fight or to rise against him. Sheikh Shamsuddin asks Shihabuddin a pointed question. This is something very touching in the play. Is it a crime to speak out for oneself and one's family? What politics did Sheikh Imam-ud-din indulge in? That he was open, frank and honest? It's a very interesting question that is asked by people all over the world at all times wherever there is some kind of tyranny. He shows the wounds caused by soldiers when he attempted to attend the meeting of Sheikh Imam-ud-din. He convinces Shihabuddin to lead the conspiracy against the king, though the conspiracy fails. Next we come to the important character in the subplot, who finally becomes a very significant character in the play. He is a Muslim Dhobi from Shiknar. The only man who understands Tughlaq in the play perfectly is Aziz. He acts on the king's announcements quickly. He is very intelligent, courageous, very swift and opportunistic. He uses all the opportunities made available for him. He wins a fraudulent case against the Sultan, impersonating himself as a Hindu, Vishnu Prasad. He becomes a corrupt officer in the government. He mints counterfeit coins and buys land in Doab when place is affected by famine. He later impersonates Ghiyasuddin and meets Tughlaq in the palace. He shares his moment of vision, understanding the world, with Tughlaq as straw and skin. He checkmates the king and gets an army officer post. He is finally recognized and rewarded as a genius. A man who does everything according to the dictates of the king gets his reward, but all these actions result in no good. Azam Jahan is a friend of Aziz. This man is a common pickpocket and a close friend of Aziz. Aziz and Azam make this comic pair like the parallel that we have in Bharani and Najib. Azam is where there is a crowd because he is a thief, a common pickpocket, and also we find him always in the company of Aziz. He is instrumental in getting the details of the case against the king. That's how he helps Aziz. He often admits his ignorance and stupidity and also lack of skill. He feels for the Hindu woman when she cries in front of Aziz, "Help me, help my child," but he is unable to help because Aziz doesn't want to help the woman. He is aware of the ultimate ruin. Finally, whoever we are, we will be ruined anyway ultimately. What other future is there for us? He asks Aziz, but Aziz doesn't listen to him. Aziz declares him hopeless and pathetic. At the end of the play, when Azam wants to leave the palace, he is called hopeless and pathetic. Azam at one point of time regrets capturing and killing Ghiyasuddin. Because of that, Aziz is able to impersonate and reach the palace. Azam cautions Aziz against the excess of power and greed. This is actually a kind of parallel scene with Tughlaq, where Tughlaq doesn't listen to anybody like his stepmother or Bharani. He doesn't listen to anybody. The same way Aziz doesn't listen to Azam. Azam prefers the deadly steeds to the safe palace. The palace is considered to be safe, but then he wants to leave the place because he can't sleep there. He can't really feel comfortable in the safe palace. He prefers death to safety in the palace. We have Ghiyasuddin Abbasid from Arabia. He is a very minor character who appears in scene 9. He calls himself a descendant of Caliph Abbasid. As he is invited by Tughlaq, he comes to Dawladabad to purify the land and restore the prayer. He is captured by Karim. Karim is a character who appears only in this scene and then disappears, and he is brought to Aziz. Ghiyasuddin comments on the country and the state of foreign visitors. Here we have a wonderful quotation. Ghiyasuddin says, "It's an unfamiliar country and the people here are treacherous. The moment they know you are a foreigner, they are out to rob you." We have had such incidents in our country. We have improved a lot. Because of such things, tourism was not well developed long ago. Now it is somewhat better. Ghiyasuddin reveals his identity and marks of recognition like letters and the ring, which Aziz captures and then kills Ghiyasuddin. Ghiyasuddin attempts to escape, but then he is killed by Azam. We have many minor characters who are significant in some way. That's why we have put all these characters together under the title Significance of Insignificant Characters. We have a young man who talks about Tughlaq. He tells us about Tughlaq's character in one way. We have the old man who gives a comment on the king. We find the Hindu woman in the first part of the play and also in the second part, where she is able to give us a glimpse of the corruption that is there in the country. We have a refugee family, a man with his several wives, and that family also comments on the society that we live in. We have the announcer who makes the announcement about the arrival of the king and other characters. Throughout the play, we have the muezzin calling the faithful to prayer. The doorkeeper also appears and opens the door and closes the door. We have the god protecting the palace. We have a crowd of people in different locations. Similarly, we have soldiers to control the crowd all the time. So, all these insignificant characters also contribute to the making up of the whole play, and they reveal to us certain important insights about the king and the country. To give you a summary of our presentation on characters and characterization in Tughlaq, we divided them into two groups: central characters in the main plot and marginal characters in the subplot. In the case of Tughlaq, we have four characters who are important for us in the main plot: Tughlaq, the stepmother, Bharani and Najib. We also have some friends and foes of Tughlaq in the form of Einel Mulk, Sheikh Imam-ud-din, Shihabuddin, Sardar, Ratan, Singh. Nobody is a born enemy of Tughlaq, but they become enemies of Tughlaq in some way or the other. We have a set of marginal characters in the subplot, starting from Aziz and Azam and also Ghiyas-ud-din. These three characters make up the subplot seriously, especially Aziz and Azam. They are considered to be the comic pairs, Akara and Makara characters in the Indian tradition, and they also show us certain lights about Tughlaq's history, Tughlaq's life and our own contemporary life. A thief asking for the post of a court thief is something like a telling comment on what is happening in our country. We have the Hindu woman and also muezzin. They are also playing an important role to tell us about the holy, unholy activities that happened in our country. We have some references for you. Please make use of them and understand the play much better, particularly the characters, most importantly the character of Tughlaq. Please look up this chapter 30 Years with an Insane Man by C.R. Simha. You will understand much about it. We can also read Gomez's article Karnad's Tughlaq as an alienated protagonist. It's available in different books. If you can get this book, please read it and understand more about the alienated protagonist. He alienates himself from everybody, including himself, from God, and that is a kind of existential character, absurd character that we have in the play. Hope you will understand more about yourself, about your interactions with people, your friends and foes, and the country that we live in by reading Tughlaq, which is considered to be a classic for all of us. Thank you.